Good day and welcome back to CTOCon 2023. We're excited to have you join us for yet another fantastic panel discussion. Today's session focuses on a topic that's top of mind for many companies out there, which is keeping top performers on board. As the competition for top talent heats up, it's becoming increasingly challenging for other companies to retain their best employees. Our panel of seasoned CTOs will share their perspectives on the strategies and best practices for keeping top performers engaged, motivated, and committed to the company's mission. I'm honored to be joined today by two distinguished guests on our panel. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have with us Cassandra Wilcox, who is CTO at Statuspere. Cassandra, thank you so much for being here today. And we have Dan Branco, who is founder and CTO of Benchmark Intelligence Group. Dan, thank you so much to you as well. Our audience would love if you would take a minute. We'll start with Cassandra to introduce yourself and talk a bit about Statuspere.
All right. Yeah. My name's Cassandra. Super happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me. I'm the CTO at Statuspere, which is a consumer-to-consumer marketing startup based out of Orlando, Florida. Basically, we can get thousands of creators posting about a brand each month. So essentially, we do influencer marketing at scale. I've been CTO at Statuspere for the last 3 years. We're early stage, so I also write a blog called Early Stage CTO on Substack, where I share my experience from doing this for the first time, now being 3 years in, kind of what I've learned and experienced in my time here. So that's me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Cassandra. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Dan Branco, Chief Technology Officer at Big Healthcare. We are a BI product for healthcare in the healthcare industry. Specifically, we help hospitals and long-term care facilities process their financial data and benchmark their data against similarly sized hospitals in the industry. I'm out of Toronto in Canada as well.
Fantastic. It's lovely to have you both. And without further ado, I think we can jump right into the topic. So I'll start with the questions. So in our research for this panel, we came across the self-determination theory, and it talks about how employees' motivation and engagement at work is influenced by some very basic psychological needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Right. So, what are some of the effective strategies that engineering leaders in today's world can implement to support these needs and to keep their technical staff motivated and engaged with the mission of the company? Dan, if you'd like to go first.
Well, there's a lot of motivational theories that people discuss. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one that people talk about quite a bit. I think the way I like to approach it is probably more similar to how a coach would manage a professional sports team. You need a program, and and that program needs to accommodate people who are on the higher end of the skills matrix, and sort of all the way down to people who might be more entry level people. And the program needs to really have a bunch of attributes that really focus on, developing your people from the ground up, developing them through your program. So your entry level people all the way, and the goal is to really get them from that entry point all the way into those top performer spots. And the other thing is really each one of your people needs to have need to have a specific plan developed for their needs. So at the end of the day, your top performers, they're looking for interesting work and money. And it's, and you might be able to razzle dazzle them with some other things, but that's really, once you've worked your way through the sort of your career and you're at that point where you feel you're a top performer, ultimately, you want to be doing this sort of work that's on the cutting edge, and you want to be compensated on the higher end of those, of that spectrum. At the entry level of your program, your sort of entry level people, they're looking for career development, they're looking for mentoring, and they're looking for work that's going to get them from the place they're in right now through into more senior roles.
All right. Cassandra, same question.
Yeah, I think what Dan's saying about a program is like, I love that. I love like any strategy that like makes it easy for employees to see like directly how they can progress and get there and like remove red tape. At Statuspere, especially in the early days, like we just didn't have any kind of career path or resources to really like have any kind of formal development program. And so for us to keep the team motivated and excited, definitely is interesting work. And then making sure that we're sharing like key context so everyone is aligned. They feel like they have the tools to be able to make an impact. Because otherwise, you know, in the early stages when you're like 10 or 15 people, there's a lot of people on the team that don't have managers, don't have clear development tracks. And so then as we've grown, we've started putting those things together. And then also just making sure that our executive team is being coached so that we can then coach and develop a good culture as we progress. And then, yeah, we've been using some tools also to kind of keep everyone like aligned and know what we're doing. So I think that contributes to motivation as well, feeling like you're actually moving the needle. So we use a platform called 15Five that manages all of our OKRs. And they've got this new high fives feature that it's easy for anyone to kind of give someone else in the company a high five, and then it shows up in our Slack channel. And so that's how we celebrate and keep everyone motivated. And then for me, also just like using one-on-one time, using our dailies, our retros to really check in with the team, get their feedback, understand what motivates them, and then doing what we can to meet those needs, even if we don't have like a full-on program like what Dan is describing.
Got it. Fantastic. So both of you mentioned having programs and the importance of like a clear career structure for employees to be able to for them to be fully motivated. So my next question is, how does a company that is growing into a bigger organization implement a system like this, right? I'm talking about implementing such a program from ground up in order to best meet the needs from like a smaller company to like a company where you can actually afford some of the tools that are used in today's world for these things, right? Like Culture Amp, like 15Five, like the one that you mentioned. I'm talking about the journey before that. How do you get to that point? So, Cassandra, would you like to go first this time?
Sure. Let's see. I think, you know, we started with just like, as far as OKRs, we didn't start it with any tools. I mean, we didn't really start with OKRs, you know, it's kind of just like CEO like tells us what to do and we do it. As we grow, we need to be a bit more autonomous, right? Not everything can go to CTO. So that's where we start defining, you know, our OKRs at company level and just kind of managing them in a shared spreadsheet, essentially, and then having each individual put theirs together. And it's a trial and error process, especially as like an early stage company with first time founders. We're like, we know this is a great tool to use and we've never really put it to use before. So just starting out with the spirit with everyone like, hey, we're going to iterate over time. You might not set the right goals, you know, and kind of like expectation setting. Like this time around, it's a pilot. We're going to just see how it goes. And the next time we'll have much better idea of how to set those goals, just so like people don't get demotivated by the fact that they didn't hit, you know, what success looks like. So yeah, how did we roll it out? I mean, a lot of it was done by our amazing like COO. So, you know, I can't speak to a lot of it from personal experience, just on my team, you know, just kind of introducing process where necessary. For me, it's really just having those retros with the team every week and iterating bit by bit from feedback and kind of introducing structure and process where necessary. I don't know if that answers your question fully.
It does. It does. Dan, same question. In your experience, what's the best way to go about it?
Similar to what Cassandra said, just roll up your sleeves and do it. We would have, in the early days, we would just have one-on-ones. I would have weekly one-on-ones with my team, and I'd manage a portfolio for each of the employees. So what are they looking to achieve in the next 90 days, a year, 5 years? Where do they want to go with their career? What are their salary expectations? I think so much of this is just having a direct one-to-one relationship with these people. I think one of the things that people really, really dislike is getting caught up in a machine of sorts. And I think I've worked in really large corporations early in my career where you get the feeling that you're in some sort of an HR system, and it really doesn't matter what you do day to day, as long as you're sort of pointed in a direction. Good things, bad things happen. And you really don't feel like you have a lot of control, and you don't really feel like anybody actually cares. So at the end of the day, having that one-on-one relationship it makes a big difference, in having really frank conversations. I've had frank conversations with people who have been, looking for some unrealistic salaries potentially, and saying, I'm sure if you can get that somewhere, great. You can't get it with us because of our size or where we are in terms of our journey as a company. And just having that, having an honest conversation, I think goes a long way. One of the best people that I've ever worked for early in my career, he was the CTO, and he interviewed every single person who they were considering for a job. And this was a large organization, like 1,500 people or so. But he invested that time because he felt that those were the things that made a difference. And so I've adopted that approach in my career.
All right, that's a great strategy as well. Whenever I research this topic, every top CEO or prominent startup always mentions the importance of the talent that you bring in, right? Because those are the people who build your company. So what do you, in your experience, what are some of the major challenges that CTOs experience while retaining these top talents, right? You can bring them on board, but how do you keep them motivated day to day and for a longer period of time? So Cassandra, if you'd like to go first.
For me, being at an early stage startup, yes, we are venture backed, but especially now with the kind of the market contracting, or investors aren't writing as big a checks, startups aren't getting as big of valuations. We're being expected to be much more conservative and not growth at all costs. So working with fewer resources, or even sometimes we just can't offer a market rate salary. That can be challenging for people. For certain roles, not being able to show a clear career path. It's kind of like, hey, if you want to make something here, you can do it. So it's definitely fits. You got to find the right kind of person for that role, or they might not be able to succeed, or they might not be able to stick around, or they stick around and they're not succeeding, and then you have to make a difficult choice. Also, startups are risky. So there are really talented people I know that I'd love to bring onto my team, but they've got families and they're not really sure, is there going to be a layoff? What's going to happen? And then, sometimes on the other side, it's not always is that person not working, but did we know what we really needed to hire for? As early stage startup founders, we don't always know. We haven't always, worked with these roles in the past. So even just making sure that we're clear about our expectations and we're communicating those properly.
All right. Thanks, Cassandra. Dan, over to you. Same question.
Well, I think if you have a professional development program in place and you're working people, you're developing your people through the program, you need to accept that at the top of that program, you're going to have turnover. And I can tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years. People are going to, your superstars are going to get to that sort of apex of what they can achieve at your organization, and then they're going to make a decision on whether or not they're going to stay. And it might be a simple decision of money. They can get money somewhere else at a bigger company or a more established company, and you have to sort of accept that. And that's why it's important to have a program to develop people, constantly have a flow of people coming up through your program, so you're moving your intermediate people into more senior roles, et cetera. So, I don't tend to worry about that stuff too much, because it is what it is. And, like I said, you're having these one-on-one discussions with people. If there's something that they need that you can do for them, you can do it. If you can't, then you have to accept that there's going to be turnover. What I tend to focus on is at the other end of the spectrum, removing negative influences from the team. So, the two main things are toxic personalities. So, I've worked in situations where I've had really high performing teams, everything is clicking, and somebody is just toxic, and it's not necessarily them per se, but it's whatever they bring to the table is not there. It's oil and water, they're just not blending. And I think those are the kinds of things if you can remove that tension, that friction from your team dynamic, that goes a long way to keeping the whole team happy, everybody in your program happy. So that's sort of one thing that I think is very, very important and often overlooked, especially when those people are potentially your highest performers. Years ago, I had a guy. He was top, one of the best software engineers I'd ever worked with. Incredibly smart. He ended up going on to work at AAA companies in Silicon Valley. But there was literally physical altercations in the office. There was all kinds of bad news, and so by removing that from the mix, it created, it just brought team morale way up. So that's an important thing. The second most important thing is, some people might argue the most important thing is, remove administrivia from your employee's life. And if you don't know what that means, it's like, pointless meetings, that regular Wednesday Zoom call where, everybody basically says the exact same things. Nothing gets done. There's no action items. I don't ever make developers, let's say, I run teams of software engineers. I don't ever make developers go to meetings. If I can help it, we'll have internal meetings where we're talking about features or we're reviewing specs, that kind of stuff. But team, bigger meetings, client meetings, I think people like to bring entourages to, especially to external meetings, to client meetings, that kind of stuff. That's just death for tech people. They want to do their thing. They don't. And your job is to do the business side. Their job is to build technology. So get rid of that administrivia, take it off their plates, and work on keeping that morale up. And the easiest thing to keep, easiest thing to do to keep morale up is to remove negative influences.
All right, thanks, Dan. And you touched upon a really interesting point there regarding conflicts and how having these top performers and conflicts arising based on their personality type. Sometimes they're different sides of the same coin, right? Conflicts do arise at the workplace. I was reading another account the other day which told almost the exact same story, where the top performer was doing all of the work, but he just refused to talk to anybody because he's like, I'm doing all of the work. You guys won't understand what I'm doing, so let me just do it. They let him go. The app was up and running within 6 months. They had to build it from scratch, but they were a much better operation, much smoother. So what are some of the effective strategies as leaders of these tech teams to resolve these conflicts and to not just with the top talent, but with the entire team? How do you resolve conflicts and make sure they don't escalate or happen again? Cassandra, would you like to go first?
Yeah. We've got pretty clear policy on this at Statuspere. If you've got conflict with someone, first of all, deal with it with that person first. We try to minimize triangulation and gossiping and I'm having this problem with this person, but let me go talk to this other person that I have a better relationship with. That can create issues. So we definitely say like, hey, if you've got a problem, talk to the person that you're having the problem with. If you need help because tensions are high, like bring in your manager to help. And like I said, like me and my executive leadership team, we're being coached in how to communicate openly. So transparency and openness are really important. Openness being like green line communication, not like red line brutal honesty. So we kind of talk about the difference between those things. I think a lot of people think they're being open and honest when actually they're just being harsh. So like when you're being open, it's really, you can only know what's going on with you. So not making comments about other people, making a lot of I statements. And so essentially sharing how you're feeling about the situation, what's occurring to you, make clear requests. And then importantly about requests, inquire with the other person about what would make that easier. Maybe what about that request isn't making sense, like really listening, not getting defensive. And then once, there's been some negotiation about the request and like what will work for both parties, like making a clear commitment. And so, like green line communication is a big value in our company. And I have to say it keeps conflict down. And then I'd say the other thing, kind of very similar to what Dan was saying, is like to keep like the toxic personalities out. We just have like a no tolerance policy for anything insensitive. Even if you're joking, no matter how good your intentions are, if it's an insensitive statement, I may not, present any consequences immediately, but it will always be called out and it will always be reminded we don't make insensitive comments here, because it's often those who, are more marginalized that would be further marginalized if they spoke up against it that are most harmed by that. So we just have a zero tolerance policy. And I've heard from some people like, well, are people going to want to work there if they can't joke around with each other? It's like, to me, it's not worth it. Like there are plenty of jokes that are not insensitive. So that's just a baseline. And then you just don't get into a lot of conflicts or a lot of like hidden resentments because it just isn't allowed to happen.
Those are great rules to have for your company. I really like those. Dan, over to you. Same question.
Yeah, I think a leader needs to be a coach. And so, my approach with people who are struggling is to give them perspective, how their actions are perceived, and also give them the perspective on, how their role impacts the team morale, the bigger organization. I think, one of the challenge managing tech people is challenging. I'm a software engineer by trade. Was writing code. I cut my teeth writing code during the Y2K crisis a long time ago. I could tell you that, people did not understand what we did. I mean, they only let us out of the basement, like 10 years ago. And most of us were locked away and not allowed to mingle with the rest of the team, right? Because people really didn't understand our culture as software engineers and what we did and how we thought. And so it can be a challenge, I think, for in certain environments, especially when you're in certain agile environments, when you have business people mingling with your software engineers, there seems to be a hotbed of conflict sometimes. But yeah, working with people one-on-one is, again, back to basics. And, like Cassandra said, zero tolerance for any nonsense that can become, dangerous in a team dynamic.
All right, thanks, guys. So what I've noticed is, so we're a fully remote company, and we've noticed that the conflicts are not as many as working within the same office environment, because you interact less. You sync for only just a brief meeting every day, and then you communicate on Slack and so on and so forth. So that also, I feel, eliminates that. So I wanted you guys to weigh in on the impact of the new working model, remote work, on top talent retention, engagement, monitoring? Just how has that impacted managing these teams for you guys? Dan, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, this is the new world order, right? Remote work is here to stay. I think you're going to have a hard time convincing information workers to go back to an office in the future. I own a variety of companies, and we've been working remotely now for about 15 years, and mostly because we wanted to find the best talent wherever it was globally, not just within 30 or 40 kilometers of where our office is. It definitely changes the game. So I think a lot of the things I said before still apply. It's important, even more so, in having those one-on-one conversations daily, weekly with your people, understanding their goals, understanding their financial goals. But you have to accept that there's a missing element. When people aren't under the same roof, there is the culture within your organization changes, the team dynamics changes, and so you have to acknowledge that and you have to account for it somehow. So what we tend to do is we do big offsite stuff periodically, bring people in from wherever they are if they can come, and we try to do stuff that way. And then, if you can't do that, like a lot of our people are in other countries, in Eastern Europe and abroad, we compensate for that in other ways, right? So I think you need to acknowledge, okay, so how can we compensate this person? How can we keep them motivated to keep doing the job, keep showing up, keep engaging with the team, even though there is, there's less of that sort of personal connection, right? So again, goes back to the basics, coaching them into, helping them understand their role within the larger organization, and helping them understand their, what's the upside for them if they, follow, if they stick to the plan and contribute in the way that you need them to contribute. Unfortunately, I think one of the things that we're going to give up with remote work is, I think, relationships, especially when you're dealing with remote engineers. I think relationships are going to become more transactional, and that's okay. I think what it does, it puts it, it's a shift in culture. It's going to force companies to run their tech projects and their tech strategies a little bit differently, but it's totally doable. I've been doing it, but you might need to live in both of those worlds where, you're managing remote people certain ways, you're managing your local people in other ways. But, culture, definitely having a culture or some sort of cultural practices is definitely going to help. One of the things that we do is we have cameras on all the time, right? So, people really don't like it because people like to basically work in their pajamas these days, but we'll have at least one day a week where we say, hey, I think for us, it's Tuesdays, cameras on Tuesdays. So, and then it becomes a bit of a thing, people wear funny t-shirts and we all have a gag about it or a laugh about it. So, those kinds of things where you're engaging and having, having frank and open conversations with people, I think will help.
Fantastic. Great insight, Dan. Thank you. Cassandra, same question.
Yeah, I've been working remotely for the last 8 years. When I started at Statuspere, I had been working remotely, and Statuspere was co-located. So that was an adjustment for me. I didn't really like it, but so I went into the office for like 2 days a week, and like for about a year, and then COVID happened, and then everyone had to go remote. So I helped the rest of the company transition. Prior, being like majority co-located and a few of us remote was really challenging, because in an office environment, when there's a meeting, people just get up and they go to the room. They may not even have like a meeting invite because they just said, oh, let's meet later about it. And then none of the remote people even know a meeting happened. No one takes any notes. And so it's a little bit chaotic. I have noticed a huge, and even our CEO, a huge improvement in just workflow, being a remote team, because now every meeting is on the calendar everything is a lot more transparent. There's meeting notes, just like there's a paper trail for everything now, because that's what you need in order to operate in an asynchronous fashion effectively. So I love remote work for that reason. As far as how it impacts people's like relationships and well-being, I have to admit, I think I experienced this. I've heard this from other people. Going from being in an office all the time to suddenly being remote, especially in a pandemic when you can't go to a cafe or anything like that, I think you do go through a slump. There's a little bit of a learning curve of how to adjust to that. So I just like want to normalize that for people. Like, first of all, pandemic work from home was not normal. But even like when you're working from home, like it is important to go get some socialization, even if it's not with the people that you work with every day. Additionally, like I think we have a pretty good culture at Statuspere. We're like 45 people now. For the most part, people turn their cameras on. I think also we're a social media company, so people want to be seen. So we don't have any policies about needing to have your camera, which I appreciate, because sometimes I just don't want to turn my camera on. And so I think if we had a problem with that, we would probably think about that and like implement something, because I think, yeah, if everyone's hiding, like you need a bit more connection. Like you do need FaceTime. We do happy hours every once in a while. There's a mix of like, I don't want to sit on another Zoom call and like, oh, actually we brought in a third-party company to do like a remote escape room thing. And so that's like just really cool and interesting. We'll do lunch and learns where, you know, one person on the team can like talk about something that's interesting to them outside of work. And yeah, like we've even had like, you know, everybody's going to get together and play this video game. And so everyone's kind of connected that way. But yeah, I think I've noticed just like the company operating a whole lot better remotely than co-located. And at this point, I'd have a hard time probably going back to co-located just because there's so many great collaboration tools. And then this year, as Dan mentioned, we are doing a big offsite that we're essentially making it mandatory. It's kind of like we're a remote company, but on occasion you will be required to come out to these in-person events because it is so important for us to get together for strategic alignment and things like that. So.
Zane, if I can, I'd like to add that, you know, in my experience, it's the remote work piece seems to resonate with some people and not resonate with others. It depends on where they are in their lives. You know, I've had younger staff who just can't, they miss that socialization piece too much, and they can't thrive in that sort of environment. But then, you know, older people who are, you know, who have families, it's absolutely crucial for them. So it's, you know, again, it just, you gotta work that plan with each and every one of your employees.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And yeah, I don't think I can ever go back to a non-remote working environment after having experienced it. It's really great. Much like the conversation that we were having, which will sadly have to come to an end. I had so many questions for you guys, but we're sadly out of time. Dan, Cassandra, thank you so very much for your time. It was lovely talking to both of you. The audience will, I'm sure, appreciate your insight into all of the things. So thank you once again for your time, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Zane. Thanks, Cassandra.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you, Dan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.